Hi, I'm microwaving some turkey dinner because of course I am. But actually it's a steak dinner, but it's a Christmas dinner. Who cares? It's some roast beef. Let's get to the topic here. All right, so I've been upset about the 70s atomic clock test explanation by some people in comments because they're not thinking. So ignore that. Let's just see what is actually the facts of this test. The facts of the test is that you have three, not four, not two, three atomic clocks. One is on the ground. Relative to everything else, it is not motionless. It's moving along with the rotation of the Earth. Pretty steady and pretty consistent. And then you have an atomic clock that is in a plane that is going east, and another atomic clock that is in a plane going west. This is happening because these atomic clocks are going along with the rotation of the Earth. So, what happens in these tests is that the atomic clock that is going forward along with the rotation of the Earth, don't ask me which way that is, just focus on the fact that it's forward, because it is analogous of a person walking forward on a train that is also moving forward, right? Both of the direction of speed, their total speed, their total distance over time, add to each other. This is obvious to anyone who has moved along a train. Your speeds, they just double up, right? So this is what happens to the atomic clock. What happens to light? Well, light is independent. It doesn't care that it's on a plane in an atomic clock. It simply moves at its regular speed. So what is it capable of doing? It is analogous to a ball with perfect bounce, going back and forth on a wall. Now let's say we shrink down the area of time for the speed of the ball, that it's going 10 meters per second. Photons don't do that, but let's just say, for the sake of example, let's say that we do that for an easy representation of what would happen. So, the faster you go, your ball is able to bounce at least 10 meters per second. So if you're going 1 meter per second, it'll still bounce back and forth. If it has perfect bounce and that bounce lasts for an eternity, a long time, for who cares what reason. Maybe it has a nuclear reactor on its back and it can just bounce as far and as fast and consistently that, like, the bouncing against the wall doesn't impart energy, but it has like a bounce redirect and then it has its own energy going back and forth. All of these factors in play. So its speed is constant at 10 meters per second, right? So, one of the best examples of a mathematical dilemma is the two trains colliding equations, where as they get closer and closer to colliding, it usually is depicted that it's going to crash the computer or come up with some error. Unless, of course, you give it a bounding region, then it doesn't matter. But for the same reason, we can think of the ball bouncing towards the front of the train wall and back again, so that whatever speed it's able to bounce backward and forward, always consistent. The only variant is the speed of the train. So what's happening with this train? Why is it important? Well, in this scenario, let's say that you have the train going at 5 meters per second. Well, the ball is able to meet up with the wall of the front of the train in that compartment, wherever it is, after a certain amount of time, and we can calculate this. Because of its speed and the other one's speed, you have to calculate where they would both, how far they would both travel before it bounces and comes back. This is analogous to a tick on a clock or swing of a pendulum. What happens if we make that train go that much faster? Well, it takes that much longer for the ball to bounce back. Because it takes that much longer for the ball to bounce forward. Now, one can argue that it would take an equal amount of time for the ball to bounce backward. Or it would take a proportional amount of time different to have the ball bounce backwards. So if the train is accelerating towards the ball, right, at 5 meters per second, and the ball is moving at 10 meters per second, we can calculate how much time it takes for that ball to complete that journey and get to the back of the train. It would be great if I did these maths and had any amount of proofs for what I'm talking about. That would just be awesome, wouldn't it? Because then you'd automatically see that the ball is traveling backward. Well, obviously you must think that it has to be up and down by a certain amount, and it definitely should be that if it's 5 meters per second extra length of time forward, well, that's not how it works, because they're independent of each other, these speeds. So they don't affect each other whatsoever. That's what light does. No matter how fast you're going, light's still going to be going at light speed. That's what Einstein said. Shut up, that's what he said. Shut up, that's what he said. Shut the fuck up, that's what he said. It doesn't matter how fast you're going. Light is consistent. You know why? Because the only thing that can affect light is maybe the substance it's in. But light in a vacuum doesn't care if it's on a train or in outer space or moving along with someone on the ground. If it's in an empty space, it will just simply moving at the same speed. See? So that's the thing. So many meters per second. So the moment you then put into a fluid or whatever else, you're changing its dynamic with the environment, but we're ignoring that entire factor. We're moving on. We're just staying in the simplified version where we have this ball, it has a consistent speed, and it's just bouncing back and forth. So I can already tell you that the difference between the train moving 5 meters per second and the train moving 6 meters per second, well, that's 10% of the speed of the ball, isn't it? So therefore, there should be. Yeah, I got a lot of plushies. So you know that that's 10% of the speed of the ball. However, when the train is then moving and the ball is keeping up with it, so you would think that the ball would have to take 10% more time to get to the front of the train. So is it the same 10% going to the back of the train? The two-way speed of light. Question. Right? It has to be 10% negative, right? How do we even check this? How do we know? Well, it'd be great if we had a simulation, right? Or if we just did some math. And I recently did some math. The same amount of speed added and subtracted from the distance was calculated to be a different amount of the speed of light in relation to the 10 meters per second, which was not the explanation I gave, but
I gain a
shut. Where was I? Oh God, I don't know. Okay. You have to take it on my word. I have done these maths. It was in the comments section. All of this is reference to something about the percentage of the speed of light. So you'll have to go watch my other videos to know that I know what I'm talking about this. But adding one speed to another forwards and subtracting it is a different ratio in comparison to the speed of light, which means going forward isn't the same as going backward by the same speed. So what does that mean? It means it takes a certain that means that as you increase the speed of the train, it is a certain amount of speed extra to go forward, and it is a different amount of speed to go backward. This discrepancy changes along with whatever speed that you're working with. And it's not intuitive. You would think that it would be equivalent. It is not. In fact, I can actually prove that right now. It's quite simple, really. Shush your stuff. Okay, so what I did was I said this. Let's say that you have. Shush. Let's say that you have 900 speed. You plus 150, you get 1,050, right? And then so let's record that number. Shush. We start with 900. So we have 1,150, right? And then we take that same, shush, and then we take the same 900 and we subtract 150. And we end up with 750. Really simple stuff. We copy that and we put that into chat. Okay, so now we take a bigger number, any bigger number, it doesn't matter what, and we say that number, let's say it's 3,000, to make it nice and simple. I forget how you do the math. I think it is that you take the speed or the difference and you then divide that by the 3,000. And you end up with a 25%. So that corresponds with the 750. So let's put that in. 0.25. Now what happens with the 1,500 case? Well, we just take the 1,050 case, and we divide that by 3,000, and you end up with 35%. There's your answer. It's so easy to prove, it's stupid. This is what happens when you add and subtract a speed to a given speed, and then you compare that to a higher number of speed. You get a different ratio to that higher number speed. 3,000 is analogous to the speed of light. 150 or 1,050 is analogous to adding speed, or the plane plus the rotation of the Earth. And then 750 is analogous to removing speed, or going in reverse of the rotation of the Earth. You can see that compared to light, the difference is not equivalent. It's not 25%. It's 25% one direction and 35% in another direction. This isn't something anyone talks about. A basic math thing anyone can do on their calculator. Just take the speed, go up one direction, down the other direction. This is how you know it will take that much percentage of speed longer, or time longer, to go forward than backwards, or shorter to go forward than backwards. It's different, that's the point. So you end up with this conclusion, and this is fucking pissing everyone off, because no one has heard this before. They always think that if you go forward and backward like a bounce is tend to do, and you increase the speed, that you're going to end up with the same amount no matter how much you increase it by. But the ratio isn't the same compared to if you are going the steady speed with your bounce, which is what light is doing. Light doesn't change its speed with its bounce. This is the only proof anyone needs to tell you that light travels a different distance going backwards than going forwards, no matter what speed you're going, okay, on your plane. But it's easy then to calculate exactly how much there is this difference, right? And again, in my last video, I did the math where the 25% refers to the 750 compared to 3,000, and the 35% refers to the difference between light speed and adding the speed. So the numbers are next to each other and then far away from each other, right? That's like these two are connected to each other, these two are connected to each other. You get it because you saw me do it. You know it. It makes sense. It's all there. It's not 1, 2, 1, 2. It's 1, 2, 2, 1. Who cares? You get it. All you really need to know is that the two numbers have a different proportion to 3000 than they do anything else. And that's really all you need. You don't need any more than that to prove to yourself and to make it completely solid in your head that going forward for light isn't the same as going backwards. Why is this important? Well, first of all, the planes that were going forward are going to experience a certain amount of tick rate that increases total speed, which is analogous to the 1050, and the planes that are going backwards with the atomic clocks are essentially going the 750, and the atomic clock on the ground is going 900. We can compare all of those speeds together if we want to. What is, for example, 900 divided by 3000? It's 3, right in between these two. So there is a 0.5 difference up and down. And you would say, well, that makes sense. Of course, you just added and it would be the same 0.5. You're not getting it. The difference is the same. Right? The difference might be the same, but because we have a value of 25 percentage of the speed of light and 35 percentage in the other direction, you have to understand that if you increase the length of how far you have to go by 25% versus 35%, you get a completely different amount of time per light bounce. That's all you have to know. That's where the unintuitive part comes in, because you did go up a exact 5 up and down. Yeah, you did. But that doesn't mean that literally is analogous to moving different amounts more in one direction and different amounts less in the other direction. And it makes a difference. It actually makes a massive difference. And it's the fact that I ignore the 900 that you make it very obvious in your head. You don't compare the ground to the 900. You don't compare the ground to, or you don't compare the ground to the 750 and the ground to the 1050, but you compare them to the speed of light. This is very important for you to get in your head and get it right. You cannot say that the percentage of the speed of light is the same forwards as backwards just because you're taking the same increment and raising it and lowering it. That's not how that works at all. So, how does it actually work? Like I said, if you take 25% of the distance you've traveled, for example, right? Let's say you're moving 1,000 meters. Well, that's going to be 250 meters you have to travel. Let's say you went, and this is per second. Let's say that you went 3,000 meters in one direction. So obviously, you went the entire distance for that second, right? The point is that if you increase and decrease these values of the distance you travel by 25 and then by 35, you end up with a completely different amount of tick per clock. And it's very understandable how much that tick would change. It's the amount of prediction that people have when they did these maths. You would think time dilation for the entire trip has to consider all of the different events that take place between going to the plane and back again to do the connection to the atomic clock. All that considered, it's a lot more obvious with this that there is going to be a difference to the ticking of the clock, and that only means light in the object traveled a different distance because of your difference of your speed versus the speed of the rotation of the Earth and going forward and backwards, and that's it. Now, that doesn't mean that going backwards and you simply going further and further backwards means eventually you're going to end up with negative speed. If the rotation of the Earth was a smaller number, you would obviously end up in some negative region, which is not possible. So let's forget about that option entirely. But please, can you focus and understand? There is a difference. Do you see it? My food is delicious. That's what happens on the planes. Now, all of the values with everything else considered, in order for time dilation to actually be a thing, all the numbers considered would have to be that much more different in compared to predictions, which is also what they said that they experienced, but I don't know if they did their math right. They must thought they had. But again, time going differently because of the forward or backward, even if you're moving at the same speed, which you're not, same speed forward and backward, but you're not moving the same ratio versus the speed of light, and that's the key difference. Right? So what does it mean? It means that time dilation is a freaking hoax. But in order for me to prove that, I would have to have their values and their numbers and all of their factors and check their math from the 70s. 55 years ago. Right? Oh, by the way, this has nothing to do with the fantastical idea of having to calculate diagonal paths. The diagonal paths means that there is an inherent longer pathway. When you go forward and backward, the same direction of travel, it's a lot easier to calculate then, isn't it, motherfucker? When you go perpendicular, then you end up with a diagonal path. Obviously, it's going to be longer. But we're ignoring that factor. We're still ending up with a difference between forward and backward. Why does it matter? It matters because, again, with satellites, they are not moving at a regular speed. They're changing speed constantly, decelerating, going slower, a smaller amount of distance over time. The bounce for a regular speed object, which is light, is going to be smaller and smaller and smaller amount of time between each bounce. This is obvious to anyone thinking about it. Meaning, satellites are incredibly dynamic, and unless you have an absolute model, even if you have an absolute model, and you compensate for all bumps that happen, which all it takes to change this and make it inaccurate is hit some space debris, like a pebble, and you get a slight bump. That you have to then compensate for that noise. Once you compensate for all the noise and everything else, atomic clocks on satellites are useless. They're still useless. Right? You compensate for the slightly curving trajectory, you compensate for the any collisions that happen, you compensate for the constant rate of deceleration and the sudden jump up to get back into orbit and distance. All of that considered, it's just too much to calculate. We beam the time up to the goddamn satellite because we don't want to do it. It's not that we don't want to do it, it's that it's literally, for the computer and everything else, it's way more taxing on the satellite's power systems to do all that math. Forget all of that nonsense. Just beam it up to space. Just beam time up to space from a regular timepiece. So what would be great is if you had a way to compensate for all of these things and have a proper simulation of what's happening to the satellite as it goes through space, so that you know all those different perturbations and stuff, which includes, the absolute tiniest things such as virtual particles and junk. If you compensate for all that stuff, maybe you'll have a working clock that can work independently in space that won't be drifting all the time. But until then, you just be lazy and beam it up into space. Beam that time ticking. You literally can't do better. So is there such thing as time dilation? The only way that I would be proven to me, it would be proven to me that there is time dilation is if the numbers varied greatly compared to all full data. And again, I haven't done a deep dive into their data. I would love to. I would love to be able to be like, you should have seen how all of this works, right? It's crazy to think that math people who were really deep into it, and it's so obvious to me now that it's like, would they have come to the similar conclusion? Would they have also still... Here's the thing. None of them mention this shit. What you say is what you know. That's it. You don't know any more than that. You don't know any less than that. If you're not saying these discrepancies, if you're not saying the difference of time going forward versus backward, it has to obviously be different. I mean, I know that they have said that they predicted a different amount of time dilation and that they got different amounts than their predictions. But I'm still scrutinizing saying they might have gotten the math wrong. I am willing to insult them to their face if they were right in front of me as an old person. I don't care. Or a young person who turned 50 now. They would have to be 60 now. Sir, I know you're not one of the ones who are actually doing the math, who had to have been like, I don't believe it. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Because there are certain intuitions you might not have had back then. That's what I believe. And now, with the whole idea of the diagonal light idea, which, yeah, if you go side to side instead of directly forward and backward, you're going to have a different value. You're going to have some diagonal path, some weird drift thing that takes place. But you have to realize that that amount adds another level of complexity, another bit that you have to compensate for, and literally every amount faster is going to make every amount that much more imprecisely, completely inaccurate compared to stationary objects, random, regular timepieces that are, well, otherwise not accelerating, ones that are on the ground. I'm probably going to play Megabunk. I don't know why I'm here now. Like, you realize, in the 70s I wasn't born. In 71 I was not born. I wasn't going to be born for another bunch of time. Right? I'm not even 40 yet, so whatever. But the point is, people like Isaac Newton and whatever else had ideas of explanations and maths and theories of the universe and all these things that happened to be correct versus everything else. So there was this whole thing that where like people were getting things right or mostly accurate compared to like real measurements. All of that stuff. They have been able to be sure of for like the majority of the time. And every time we make a measurement, we say, yeah, we were close, but then we were off by like a little bit of something just based off of certain assessments that we're doing. So we're updating our theories. So it's not wrong to say that a future measurement couldn't also, but this we're talking about me just doing estimations and the math, which everyone had the same math, so they couldn't have, why would they have all of this difference? They compensated for all of these things. People in the comments said they compensated for all of these things. But I've heard people say that the amount of speed forward and backwards was equivalent, and that's wrong. And I, for some reason, believed them when they said that it was going to be equivalent forward and backward, and that's wrong. So then I have to question literally everything that I've ever heard anyone say, because unless they give the proper full details or even the correct gist of the details. Journalism just sucks at doing all of that right. It'd be great if they did it right, but they haven't, is the thing. Even doing the journalism fails. But then you get this other guy. The reaction I had to this guy's time stuff. Where is that video? I had to. Where the fuck is it? Clocks tick slower. Oh my god, did I do the formatting wrong? Please tell me I didn't do it wrong. Okay, yeah, no, this is the guy. Freaking make that the thumbnail, you dipshit. Why is it the other thumbnail? This. Done. That is the thumbnail now. Thank you. Stupid shit. Clock ticks slower. It should be that. Going in. Why isn't it that? Refresh. Motherfucker. Why does it look like that and on here it looks like this? Where's my goddamn channel? How does it look? I need to know. Where's the video? I can't see it. It's a live stream. Shut up. What the hell is all that shit? Where's the freaking thumbnail update? Whatever. It's still not done correctly. It's a 2-hour clocks tick slower, this freaking bullshit video. And I'm like, come on. What are you doing? Fix it. There's the thumbnail. Go back. Revert it to this. Because this is the most telling thing about it. I hate it when it says that I got the format wrong or whatever else with the thumbnail being crap. It's like, no. This is what I'm responding to. It takes me 2 hours to respond to this guy saying clocks don't tick slower when we literally did the math. We know that it ticks slower. It has to tick slower. And then faster, depending on which direction compared to the rotation of the Earth and the thing that is stationary-ish, which is moving exact with the rotation of the Earth. So whatever, thumbnail's fixed. Shut up. Yay, we did it. We fixed the thumbnail. There it is, it looks beautiful. It's a 2-hour essay on a thesis on a, or me just, it's a 2 hour, no, it is a 2-hour essay on a 45-minute thesis. Which, of course, now I have to go back into my history, find his video, which I have watched a lot of other things. Here it is, biggest misconception and the bullshit of the fucking ever. And shut up, because you're still wrong. I'm sorry. You're just insanely wrong. So if you want to watch it without my commentary, there you have it. You can watch that first, and then, oh look, I have to then reference this to this current live stream as it's happening, because it's happening. Can I even do that? No. I can do it later. But you get it. Knowing this kind of math, the very simple trick that tells you that forward versus backwards amount of speed doesn't equal the same amount in comparison to the speed of light, like it looks like it's something, thing that's smart. But then if it's something that they already compensated for, then how am I saying anything new if they already said that? That's the thing. People would tell me. Makes sense that if they literally know this stuff when they were doing the math in the 70s, which obviously anyone looking at it would be like, yeah, you just add these numbers, these values, and you subtract them from each other, and that's simple. And the value of the speed of the rotation of the Earth isn't 900, I know that. And the value of the plane is still 150, but you have to do like accurate numbers. And the value of the speed of light isn't 3,000, it's 300,000 or 300 million minus a few. And you have to be accurate with all those numbers, but just to get the intuition about how it will be different forward than backward. No one talks about that, and it pisses me off. So here you have it. Is that enough to say time dilation is 100% a hoax? No, it's not. I'll admit that. It's not enough. There has to be something else. Also, people in my Twitch chat, you have mentioned, why do you say you're a VTuber when you clearly don't have a VTubing model? Where is it? There it is. Of course, I do have a VTubing model. So hi, this is my room. This is where I've been doing VTubing or whatever. And really what happens is it takes my camera and it puts it on to the guy's face so I can move my head, I can move my eyes, and I can talk sort of, and it does more to my right eye than my left eye because of how much light is on my face and all that junk, but it doesn't matter. And I can also go, how you doing? And I'm not wearing a headset because I don't need one. But of course, I also can't move the rest of my body, so that kind of sucks. And my voice, my whatever, it's not the best. It's definitely not the best lip reading. I don't know why. Couldn't imagine why. I'll see you later.